The View studio always had a certain hum about it, a mix of chatter, camera equipment whirring, the muffled shuffling of cue cards, and the faint hiss of the stage lights overhead. It wasn't loud, not exactly, but it was constant, like the air was charged and waiting for something to happen. The audience filed in with coffees in hand, clutching phones to snap a blurry pre-show selfie before the producers gave the inevitable no-phone signal. There was that eager midday buzz, moms on a break from errands, retirees out for a live TV taping, fans of the co-hosts who knew their jokes before they landed. But today, something was different. Maybe it was the way the set felt just a little cooler, the air conditioning hitting sharper, the way the hosts were unusually focused on their notes instead of each other's banter. Or maybe it was just the name on the guest card. Prince Harry. The stage manager moved briskly, headset tight, clipboard in hand. 2 minutes to intro, she called, her voice carrying over the chatter. Behind the desk, Whoopi Goldberg shuffled her stack of questions, glancing once toward the wing. Joy Behar adjusted her glasses, lips pressed in that faint, unreadable line she wore before a spicy segment. Sharon Osbourne, brought in for the week as a guest co-host, sat perfectly upright, her mug in one hand, the other tapping a manicured nail against the ceramic in a rhythm that seemed more about keeping time with her thoughts than any impatience. Every so often her gaze flicked toward the entrance, but she gave away nothing. The applause sign lit up just as the band struck its intro cue. The camera's red light snapped on, and the familiar theme rolled. The audience clapped, some a bit too enthusiastically, the kind of applause that signaled not just politeness but a hunger for what might come next. Then, from the side of the stage, he appeared. Prince Harry, in a perfectly cut navy suit, walked with the kind of unhurried confidence that wasn't about cameras, it was about control. His smile was faint, more a suggestion than a display, as if he were acknowledging the audience the way a headmaster might acknowledge a school assembly. His eyes swept the room, not lingering too long on any one person, but enough to register their presence. He stepped forward, shook Whoopi's hand. "Harry, welcome to The View," Whoopi began warmly. "Thank you," he said, his voice smooth, every syllable precise, but there was a clipped edge underneath, like someone already measuring the clock against their patience. "It's good to be here speaking with people who care about the world beyond their own bubble." It was meant as a compliment. It landed like a dart. Sharon's head tilted the slightest degree. Joy glanced at Whoopi. Whoopi gave a microscopic shrug, the kind of move that said, "We'll roll with it." The opening questions were easy, safe. His foundation's latest work with wounded veterans. Stories of resilience, carefully crafted soundbites that publicists loved. And yet, in every answer, there was something extra. Not arrogance exactly, something heavier. Each point was framed as if he were the only person in the room who truly understood sacrifice. Joy leaned forward, smiling in that warm, curious way she had perfected over decades. "How do you balance this work with family life? I imagine you've got a lot pulling you in different directions." Harry smiled, one of those smiles with a hidden subtext. "It's all about discipline. You either manage it well or you don't. I suppose I'm used to pressure." Joy's eyebrow arched. "And you don't think we know anything about pressure?" she teased. "Not on the scale I'm talking about." There was a ripple in the audience, half a laugh, half a murmur. The smallest shift of air, but noticeable. Sharon's nails tapped faster. Whoopi tried to smooth it over. "Different kinds of pressure, I guess." "Perhaps," Harry replied, leaning back slightly. "But let's not pretend they're equal." The first crack in the glass. Sharon finally entered the conversation. Her tone was light, but her eyes were sharp. "Sounds like you've had a tough time then. Life in the palace must have been dreadful." Harry turned his head toward her. "It's not about the palace, Sharon. It's about duty. Something I don't expect everyone here to understand." A low "oh" rolled across the audience. Sharon's lips curled in the smallest of smiles. "Is that right? Because I understand duty very well. I also understand that in America we don't curtsy to anyone at the table." "Yes, the famous American frankness," Harry said. "Though I've noticed it often comes wrapped in ego." "Better than wrapped in entitlement," Sharon shot back. The room shifted, no one breathing too loud, but everyone leaning forward. Joy glanced between them, weighing whether to step in. "Let's get back to the Veterans Gala?" "We will," Harry interrupted smoothly. "But perhaps we should clear the air. I'm picking up on a certain hostility." "No hostility, Harry," Sharon said with a sharp laugh. "Just an observation. You've been here 10 minutes, and you've managed to sound like the only adult in the room. I'm starting to wonder if you believe that." "I don't believe it," Harry said evenly. "I know it." The audience reacted louder this time. Whoopi raised a hand. "Okay, let's not." Harry cut her off. "If we're going to have an honest discussion, let's not dress barbed questions up as innocent ones." And if we're going to have a guest, Sharon countered, let's make sure he understands this isn't Buckingham Palace. You're not owed deference here. Harry chuckled. I wouldn't expect it. Respect would be nice, though. And that works both ways, Sharon said. They held each other's gaze for a moment. The tension was visible now, a wire pulled taut across the desk. The floor manager held up 2 fingers. 2 minutes until break. Whoopi turned to the camera with the kind of forced calm only years of live television could teach. We're back with Prince Harry, she said evenly. Talking service, family, and what it takes to build something that lasts. Harry's smile returned. Which I would love to do, if we can keep the noise to a minimum. He didn't look at Sharon. He didn't have to. The audience murmured. Joy laughed lightly, but it was the kind of laugh that covered discomfort more than amusement. All right, Joy said, let's keep it constructive, Harry. About the gala. Constructive, Harry echoed, his tone suddenly cooler. That would be new. The ripple was louder now, like a storm building on the horizon. If you're watching this unfold right now, you can feel the heat building. This is the kind of conversation that doesn't just trend, it explodes. And if you want to be here when the next clash lands, hit that subscribe button now so you don't miss what's coming next. Joy's brow furrowed. New for this table? Harry didn't back down. Look, I respect the platform, but let's not pretend I'm here to be cross-examined by people who skimmed the briefing on the way to makeup. A small chorus of boos rose from the crowd. Others shushed them. I read your whole brief, Joy said firmly, and your book, twice. Then you know I'm allergic to loaded questions, Harry replied, his smile like glass. Ask what you actually mean. The studio seemed to shrink around them. And somewhere off camera, producers leaned forward in their seats, sensing they had something rare. Something dangerous. Something that was only just beginning. The red light on the main camera died with a blink, and the sudden absence of that tiny glow seemed to release the studio in one collective exhale. The applause sign dimmed. The band played a jaunty, harmless riff that felt absurdly mismatched to the undercurrent now crawling across the desk. Harry took the sip of water offered by a stagehand without breaking eye contact with Sharon. She smiled, but it wasn't warm, it was the polite, sharp-edged kind reserved for opponents you still have to share a table with. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temple. Joy shifted in her seat, flipping through her question cards though she clearly wasn't reading them. The producer, a lean man in black with a headset that looked welded to his skull, ghosted up to Whoopi, whispered fast and low, then disappeared as quickly as he came. They're loving it upstairs, she muttered, almost to herself. Joy shot her a look. Upstairs always loves the fire until it burns the set down. Sharon chuckled faintly without looking away from Harry. I'm not worried about the set. Harry's mouth twitched, just enough to suggest he'd heard her, just enough to suggest he'd file it away. The floor manager strode into view, holding up 3 fingers. 30 seconds, she barked. Everyone straightened. It was the unspoken law of live TV, whatever happened in the break, it got buried the second the red light returned. Or at least, it was supposed to. The music swelled, the light blinked back on, and Whoopi's voice slid into that familiar, controlled register. We're back with Prince Harry, talking about service, sacrifice, and the work being done for veterans across the globe. Harry's gaze returned to her, his expression back to polite guest mode. That work is the reason I'm here. It's about giving people the tools to reclaim their lives, and making sure they have support that actually shows up when it's needed. That's noble, Joy said, and there was no sarcasm in her voice. So where's the biggest gap right now? Trust, Harry said instantly. Too many institutions say they'll help and then vanish the second the cameras turn away. We've built something different. It's real, it's personal, and it doesn't depend on how good the photo op looks. Sharon's mug hovered just below her lips. Sounds like you're describing more than just veteran support. Harry looked at her evenly. If the shoe fits. There it was, the spark again, flickering right at the edge of open flame. Harry, Whoopi said quickly, you've had your share of critics, but you've also had supporters, people who say you're brave for telling your story and standing by it. How do you respond to those who say you've turned your personal life into a brand? Harry didn't hesitate. When an institution ignores pain, you put it on the record yourself. That's not branding. That's survival. And when the record becomes the brand? Sharon asked. His eyes slid toward her. And when the brand becomes a cudgel? When critics pretend their curiosity is civic duty. Honesty isn't a cudgel. It's a compass. Sharon took a slow sip, then set her mug down with deliberate care. Your compass seems to point wherever the check's clear. A ripple of sound moved through the audience, half gasps, half approving claps. Harry's smile thinned. Ah, there it is. The old chorus. Shut up and be grateful. No, Sharon said smoothly. Just stop assuming the rest of us are beneath you because we ask questions you don't like. You're confusing pushback with disrespect, Harry replied. They're not the same thing. They feel the same when you lace them with condescension, she countered. The exchange was so tight, so fast, that Whoopi had to cut across it like a referee stepping between two fighters. Okay, let's anchor in outcomes. Harry, what are the tangible next steps for your organization? He exhaled slightly, pivoting without a glance at Sharon. San Diego expansion next quarter. Norfolk is greenlit. Family support that actually works, not just hashtags and handshakes. Good, Sharon said, her tone almost bored. Because that's the only part of this that actually matters. Harry looked at her, and this time there was something in his expression that wasn't anger, it was sharper, more focused. Then stop trying to make the rest of it a circus. Then stop walking in like the ringmaster, she shot back. The floor manager gestured wildly for a commercial cut. Whoopi took it without hesitation. The red light vanished again, and with it went any semblance of cordiality. That ringmaster line? Sharon said under her breath, leaning just close enough for him to hear. Keep it. It'll make a great clip for your YouTube channel later. Harry's reply was calm, even a little amused. You seem awfully invested in my clips. Invested? Sharon's smile didn't reach her eyes. Just curious how long you can play this role before the crowd turns. Joy muttered something to Whoopi about the weather, a desperate attempt to pull the energy somewhere, anywhere, else. Whoopi wasn't listening. She was watching the two of them like she was trying to measure how close the match was to the powder keg. Back in 5, the floor manager called. The segment came back hotter. Harry, Joy began, there's this perception, fair or not, that you're repeating the same cycle you claim to be breaking. Public pain for public payoff. How do you respond to that? Harry didn't look at her right away. He took a breath, then said, I respond by telling the truth. Whether people understand it or not is up to them. Some people here included. Joy blinked. That's unfair. So is most of my life, he replied, and the chill in the delivery made the audience shiver. Unfair, Sharon repeated, is taking pot shots at people's families when you lose your footing. Harry's eyes sharpened. Is that your preamble to talking about mine again? It's my warning, Sharon said softly. Keep my family out of your mouth. He tilted his head. You've certainly jumped on mine. The audience reacted, some gasped, others leaned forward like they were watching a car on the edge of a skid. Sharon's voice dropped to a blade's edge. You put yours on a stage and sold tickets. Harry let the silence stretch, holding it until it nearly snapped. Fine. You want the unvarnished version? You call me entitled because I won't play nice with a table that confuses kindness for weakness. You sneer at my protection of my family while you've built segments out of yours. You don't get to weaponize my life to excuse your manners, Sharon fired back. I'm not weaponizing, Harry said, leaning forward. I'm pointing out the hypocrisy. The crowd's murmurs rose again, this time carrying an edge of excitement, like they knew they were in the middle of something that would be clipped, memed, and replayed before the day was out. Whoopi stepped in, her voice firmer now. All right, let's keep this focused. We're not here to trade family shots. We're here to talk about service. Harry smiled faintly. I am talking about service. Just not the kind you can measure in applause. Sharon's nails tapped once more on the mug. And somewhere off camera, in the control booth, a producer whispered into their mic, don't cut it. Let it run. By now, even the people in the back rows could feel it. The conversation wasn't about veterans anymore. It wasn't even about the book, or the brand, or the cause. It was about dominance. About who got the last word, the last hit, the last moment before the break. And the next hit was coming. The studio was thick with the kind of silence that wasn't silent at all. You could hear everything, the creak of the cameras shifting on their mounts, the faint hum of the overhead lights, the shallow breaths from an audience that had gone from entertained to riveted to horrified in the span of minutes. Harry's knuckles were white against the edge of the desk, his body leaning in like he might close the distance entirely. Goldberg, for the first time all night, didn't fill the space with words. His mouth was a tight, thin line, eyes locked on Harry's with an intensity that wasn't about comedy anymore. You've crossed a line, Harry said, his voice low, dangerous. Not just with me, with the truth. The audience didn't clap. They didn't laugh. They were watching like it was a car crash they couldn't look away from. Goldberg tilted his head just slightly, almost imperceptibly, like a predator sizing up the last move. The truth, he repeated, tasting the word. Your truth, Harry, is a script you've been rehearsing for years. The only difference now? You finally found a stage big enough to sell it. Harry laughed once, sharp, humorless. Better than hiding behind jokes so you don't have to face the consequences of what you say. A faint murmur rippled through the audience, a shifting in seats, a collective intake of air. Colbert sat back, but not in retreat. It was the calm of someone who thought they'd already won. Here's the thing, Colbert said. People like you come here thinking you're untouchable. Thinking you can spin every question, dodge every blow. But sometimes, he leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper, you run into someone who isn't playing your game. Harry didn't blink. Neither am I. For a beat, they just stared at each other. The tension wasn't just in the air, it had settled into everyone's shoulders, into the trembling of the cue cards in the hands of a stage assistant frozen just off camera. The producer's voice crackled in Colbert's earpiece, urgent but steady, we need to cut. Now. Colbert ignored it. Harry's hands left the desk. He stood up slowly, the chair scraping against the floor in a sound that made everyone flinch. The audience's eyes followed him like he was carrying live wires in both hands. You want a headline, Stephen? Harry said, his voice suddenly loud enough to echo against the rafters. Here's one, I'm done letting people like you write my story. And with that, he stepped away from the desk. Colbert didn't call after him. Didn't joke. Didn't even smirk. He just watched him walk past the cameras, past the stunned band, past the audience that didn't know whether to clap or sit in reverent silence. Harry reached the curtain at the edge of the stage and pushed through without looking back. The heavy fabric swung behind him, swallowing him into the backstage shadows. The applause sign lit up automatically, a reflexive part of the machine. A few people clapped hesitantly, unsure if they'd just seen the end of a segment or the end of something much bigger. Colbert turned back to the camera, his expression unreadable. We'll be right back, he said. But the internet didn't wait for a commercial break. By the time the credits rolled, clips of the exchange were everywhere. People were choosing sides in comment sections, hashtags were trending, and think pieces were already in the works. Backstage, Harry didn't slow down until he hit the door to the street. Flashbulbs exploded in the dark like white fire. He didn't shield his eyes. He just kept walking, each step a beat in a story that would be told and retold in countless headlines. Some would call it bravery. Others would call it self-destruction. But one thing was certain, no one would forget it. And if you think this was the end, you haven't been paying attention. Subscribe now, because the next chapter of this story is going to make this look like the calm before the storm.